What's going on, everybody? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch. Today marks the return of Coach FREEDO, the YouTube series where you can get your gameplay reviewed and made into a lesson type video to be put on YouTube. If you'd like to submit a gameplay, upload it to YouTube and email in the link to youroverwatchplays@gmail.com. Now today, we're going to talk about the responsibility of the tank player. Now typically, the most obvious tank character in Overwatch is Reinhardt. He sets up the team fight in a way that the entire team is trusting you to do the right thing. Now granted, at the lower ranks of play, not everybody is playing perfect, but when a tank player is making major mistakes, it has very obvious ripple effects to the entire engagement of how your team can fight. I have just started to learn Reinhardt myself to a level where I would consider him in my pool. For a long time, I couldn't hit any of his abilities and I was terrible. But after watching pro play for so long, I've really grown to respect and love Reinhardt. And it's the type of character that you have to play very delicately. Granted, he's a big, hulking German badass, but there's delicate technique to playing him properly. Our hero Jims is actually pretty sick at landing Reinhardt's offensive abilities, but some of his shield usage leaves something to be desired. Let's look at a few examples of when not to shield, and then we'll break down how to manage this as the Reinhardt player and the Reinhardt player's team to make sure that these mistakes don't get made. Right around the first setup, it might seem intuitive for you to block as much damage as quickly as possible, but this actually is a massive mistake. Losing your shield here early, before any of your team really can get into the fight, means that once the enemy decides to come, which of course they're going to do once that you don't have a barrier to defend with, your friendly Roadhog can easily just get picked off. Taking a really wide angle like this to be able to have the entire enemy team see your shield with pretty much none of your teammates ready to fight into it means that you're shielding nothing. This could be called trash blocking. We've talked a lot about like trash damage back in the day on this channel. There is such a thing as trash blocking as well. If you're just holding your shield up so it gets wrecked before you're even making a fight and creating space for your DPS characters to peek something, you're losing it basically for no reason and then making an opening for the enemy team to exploit. Because of course, when the enemy team hears my barrier's destroyed, that means it's go time. There's no shield to protect them, and if they have a shield, which you're lucky enough that the enemy team doesn't have a Reinhardt, but if they did, they could get completely free peeks on you. And an enemy Roadhog behind a Rein shield when you don't have one is basically a free kill. And we all know how much man advantage matters in Overwatch, so if you give up that, you can give up the entire team fight. Now here's another example that we could break down how to think about managing this resource. Here, Jims isn't even really contacting the enemy, and in fact, he's only facing in order to block damage that isn't resulting in a team fight anyway. If he and his team shows a little bit more discipline here and realize that the enemy team isn't really engaging them, but just poking from range, he could stay on cart, behind the cart, use that for cover instead, and then when the enemy team wants to actually engage and contest the cart, pop out a 2,000 hit point shield barrier instead of have it whittled down by the time that the engagement comes. Now granted, a whole bunch of Mr. Bean-esque Looney Tunes action happens where he gets hooked in, Zarya bubbles, then is able to Earth Shatter the entire enemy team because the enemy team doesn't have a Reinhardt. Incredible amounts of luck happen there, but against a higher ranked team, this type of tomfoolery won't happen. You're gonna get punished for not having the shield when you need it, more times than not, even if it resulted in a crazy wham-bam play that you can't really expect to happen again. Shield management is a massive part of playing Reinhardt really well, and I've most recently thought up a new way to describe how to go about using your barriers, whether you're playing Reinhardt or Winston. Don't waste it. You have to be actively using it to set up an engagement. Barriers in this game set up initiation. And a long time ago, we made a video that was called Roadhog is not a tank. And a big percentage of the community rolled their eyes and said, Roadhog's not a tank, well, he's in the tank category, you silly doofuses. But really, I think what we should do, instead of even utilizing the phrase tank, because really it's a useless phrase, what the team needs is proper initiation. And that's why Winston or Reinhardt work really well as a main tank, because they can place those barriers in positions that set up an initiation for your team. Blueberries in this game are a beautiful looking glass window for your team to peer through and feel safe. It's like you're playing one of those zombie shooter games back at the arcade. You know the evil creatures on the other side of the glass aren't going to hurt you and you can just shoot away to your heart's content. That's the security blanket that you give your team when you set up that Rein shield. Now in this game in particular, Jims is having some trouble getting that cohesion with his teammates about when this barrier is going up, when it should be up, and oftentimes they seem to be surprised when it has to go down. Part of that is, of course, when he pops up his shield to engage a corner, oftentimes he leaves it up almost indefinitely until it's broken. You watch a lot of pro players who really master the ability to manage this resource. They pop it in and out of effect and make sure that they only are using it to set up an initiation. You want to pop it in front of a character on your team to let them duel something, not simply just stand as a wall to just absorb as much damage as possible. Although it might be incredibly fun to be earth-shattering the entire enemy team and swinging your hammer until they're all dead, you should think of your Reinhardt shield as an offensive ability as well. But instead of something that allows you to do cool stuff, it allows your teammates to do the cool stuff. It sets up for an offensive peak that they otherwise couldn't do. Creates a cover spot that wouldn't exist otherwise. And I think this is something that a lot of players across the entirety of matchmaking at all the ranks struggle with. Maintaining the Reinhardt barrier properly is the Reinhardt's job mainly, but I think all the players on the team should be paying attention to when your Reinhardt shield is starting to crack. Because to be honest, I don't find that many Reinhardt players in matchmaking at all. I think we all need to give these players a helping hand when it comes to managing the shield. A lot of times they're leaving it up way too long because they're afraid that you're going to overpeak to the point where if they drop it at any time, you're just going to instantly die. Instead, try to build a little bit of a rapport with your Reinhardt player, or as the Reinhardt player yourself. Communicate with your team when is a good time to peak, when you're going to recharge the shield to get it at full strength, because ideally, when the actual engagement comes, when the enemy commits to the fight, you want to have the shield at full strength. Whereas if you just keep your shield up nonchalantly through the fight and just absorb poke damage constantly, you're not going to have it when the actual engagement comes. And that's very important. So oftentimes a support player might be able to see that the Rein shield is cracking and have a better view of where the team's set up. A lot of times Rein can't see immediately behind him. This is what makes communication so important in these moments. If you're the Lucio in this team comp, let the Reinhardt know that his friendly DPSs aren't even nearby utilizing his shield. Recharge your shield, Rein. And in the same token, when Rein, you see an opportunity to turn the corner, to set up for an engagement, to create that initiation, coordinate with your friendly Roadhog or McCree or whomever in order to take that angle and make use of one of the most powerful abilities in the game. The ability to avoid damage altogether and deal out free damage towards an enemy target. Amazing! That little bit of coordination puts frags on the board for your team. Now, I went kind of hard on our buddy Jims here, and of course the premise of this video is blame the tank, but I want everyone to remember that there are so many things in Overwatch that are difficult to coordinate with teammates, that I think it's important to remember that we all help each other do this. It doesn't hurt to remind your Zarya, look out, there's a diva. Avoid her when using your Graviton. Let your Mercy know the state of the battlefield, whether it's worth for her to dive in to try to res you or not. If you don't want to get rezzed into an instant death again when the enemy teams are all set up around you and it's not going to be a useful one, relay that information. And the same thing goes with the Reinhardt shield. Everyone can see that it's starting to get cracked. Help that Rein player out. When everyone has taken cover, give him the information that he needs to know that it's okay to drop his shield so he's not afraid of letting you die. Because guess what? If he keeps his shield up forever and it gets poked down anyway, you lost the shield war entirely. The way to win the shield war is actually by keeping your shield down until it's ultimately needed. If you just simply keep your shield up at all times, the enemy Reinhardt can min-max his shield, duck it away at a moment's notice, let his teammates use cover to peek in and out to not take any damage, but whittle down your shield. Then, when the enemy team has a shield and you don't, it's an instant loss, basically. So you better prepare for that. Reinhardt is an incredibly powerful character, a mainstay in Overwatch competitive play, but you have to be able to utilize the Reinhardt to its fullest extent as a team. Otherwise, you might as well not have one. And sometimes, I think that's actually a good strategy to have. Try to learn how to play without a Reinhardt, and think to yourself, how would you position to stay safe without that Reinhardt there? Once you learn how to do that, you can learn how to reposition when your Reinhardt needs to recharge his shield, because those are the same spots you should be in. Stay safe behind cover, hide behind a car around the corner until that shield regenerates, then reinitiate and take the fight again. Tank play is so incredibly important to the game of Overwatch, and it sets up the entire team engage. And if it's played poorly, it could be impossible for your DPS to get working, and then everyone starts pointing fingers at each other. So when this happens to you, be sure to coordinate with your tank player to make sure they know where they need to be. Tank players are tough. They want to be in front, taking the damage for you guys so you can have fun. Help them do that. They're the ones that are going to be taking the majority of punishment. So give them the information to do that job well. Here's another example from a gameplay that was sent in to me that just shows case in point what a bad engagement looks like. You want to set up a clean engage. And what I mean by that is when your Reinhardt decides it's time to initiate, Everyone's behind them, they're committed to the fight, and they go. If Reinhardt has to be confused about whether he's doing any useful shielding or not, whether we're actually committed and he's got his team behind him and you can confidently go take space, he ends up standing around in a limbo just taking spam damage, and 2,000 hit points on a massive hitbox is not hard to chew down when the entire enemy team is blasting into it. The way to set up an engagement right is to recharge the barrier, pick the angle of attack, and commit and go before it's too late. You only have a few seconds of that Reinhardt shield working, and if that play doesn't get set up properly, with that tanking initiating a fight to set up the space of the battlefield, nobody can do their job. And often can lead to finger pointing and a lot of salty aggression between teammates. Nothing's dying. What are we doing? Why are we getting wrecked so bad? Give your tanks the confidence to go in, and when it's time to go, just go. Don't be afraid to play the game of Overwatch. Get in there, get your hands dirty, and have some fun. And I think you'll be surprised when you find out that when you actually commit as a team to just take an engagement and go, you're going to have a lot more success and find yourself soaring through the ranks. At the very least, getting up to like diamond at least. Because players at ranks below that don't know what to do when an entire enemy team just runs right at them. They don't know how to peel and disengage because they don't come up against that style of play. So tank players and players that are playing with tanks coordinate with each other to set up these engagements, and you're gonna have a lot of fun, I guarantee you. Guys, if you enjoyed the video and you found it useful, please hit the like button. It really does help us out. Subscribe for more because we upload each and every day. So you're going to hit the bell icon so you get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description, you can check out our Twitch page, our Twitter, and our Discord server where you can interact with our community and find teammates to pair up with. You can find a Reinhardt to initiate all over those team fights. Find the tank player of your dreams. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.